My friend Evan has always been troubled. The sort of kid you knew would go down the wrong path and wind up in the news. I remember when the story about Mark Lawrence came out. He was that teen who, back in 2007, took his father's gun from a safe after his parents took away his video game console. He came up behind them while they were on the sofa watching TV, told them he had a surprise for them, and shot them both in the back of the head. Not long after the Lawrence story came out, I remember Evan laughing and telling me, "Dummy got caught almost immediately. If I were ever gonna do something like that, I'd be smarter about it." We lived only 3 houses apart, so we used to hang out a lot. Evan was obsessed with true crime, which meant we watched a ton of it. He was drawn to the most heinous stuff, like that case from the early 2000s where a woman butchered her husband, cooked him up into a meal, and hung his skin up to dry. The officers who came to her house brushed against the skin, thinking it was a curtain. This was way inappropriate for 12-year-olds, of course, but neither of us had very involved parents. Maybe because of all this stuff, Evan was convinced that evil was pretty much everywhere. "Dude," he said, "if this is how much we see, the people who are caught, how many do you think get away with it?" "Not many," I said confidently. "If they did, we'd hear about it in the news. People would be disappearing. But think how many might be labeled accidents, but are really murders. Falls down the stairs, heart attacks. I bet so many people bump off old folks when they don't want to take care of them, or want their money." "Doubt it," I said again. "It would be so easy," said Evan. "I bet there's tons of murders sliding under the radar because people just don't expect you to actually kill. So easy." In hindsight, this conversation screams, red flag, but as kids, we both had a morbid fascination with this stuff. But by far Evan's biggest obsession was the silver cord killer, who strangled 4 women in our city and was never caught. I found out from Evan's dad, not from Evan himself, that one of the victims was actually Evan's older half-sister. She was abducted in '99 when Evan was only 4 years old. Like all the victims, she was found naked, her body recovered from the tunnels under Millstone Island. And finally, I understood the motive for his true crime obsession. He wanted to catch the person who'd killed his sister. He was trying to understand how it happened. When I asked him about her, he claimed to remember her singing to him and playing on the swings and admitted he watched every scrap of news relating to her death that he could. So that summer, I suggested we search. Go into the tunnels and look for clues. Bro, Evan's eyes lit up. That would be dope. We spent a whole summer scoping out those tunnels, winding through unlit utility passages seemingly forever through the cool dark. If you know your way, you can crawl through a narrow passage to Crow's Nest Cave, where teens and urban explorers sneak in to drink, light up, and graffiti their names. There are even some carvings on the cave walls people have made of goat heads and demon faces. But it's mostly just discarded beer bottles and trash. The explorations were thrilling, but the closest we found to anything suspicious was a switchblade, a discarded baby doll, and a loop of wire that seemed likely to have come from a bracelet. Evan insisted the news was all wrong, that the killer wasn't anything like people suspected. Maybe he was right, but he was wrong about the tunnels. There was no evidence there of any killer whatsoever, silver cord or otherwise. After that summer, our interests shifted from true crime to video games. We played lots of shooters. I got into sports, taekwondo, and later rowing, backpacking, any wilderness stuff. Evan got into drugs. We'd still occasionally meet up for a hike. I'd go for the nature. He'd go for the opportunity to light up and escape his parents' constant squabbles. But I saw less and less of him. By the time I entered college, he was in and out of jail, getting in trouble for dealing, breaking and entering, petty crime stuff. The last time I heard from him was when he called me from jail, asking me to bail him out. Reminding me what good friends we used to be. Reminiscing. "Hey Jack," he said, "remember that summer we spent searching the tunnels?" Yeah, pretty transparent, trying to target my heartstrings with a bond that had wilted years ago. But I smiled anyway because those were better times. That was dope, he said. We never did find much, did we? Nope. Bet if we searched those tunnels now, things would be different. Hey, maybe we go again once I'm out, yeah. Sure. So, I was wondering if you could do me a favor. Yeah, okay. I was a sucker. I went and bailed him out later that day. We made plans to hang out, maybe to explore those tunnels again. I knew he'd blow me off, but what can I say? He was an old friend, and I felt bad that he'd wound up this way while my life was pretty steady. What's more, he found out while in custody that his dad had died. Suicide, apparently, which was not a surprise to anyone who knew Evan's father, but nonetheless surely must have hit Evan hard. Evan was worried now about his mom, having to raise his baby sister alone. Plus, they needed money. They always needed money. He wanted to go check up on the two of them, make sure they were doing okay without his dad. I told him I was here if he or his family needed any help. I gave him my condolences. He just smiled and told me thanks and didn't mention his father again on the drive back. You know, they actually found new evidence in the case, he said to me when I dropped him off. Shit, really? Yeah, the ghost of a smile. I'll tell you about it next week. But he didn't get a chance. I got a voice call from him 2 days before we were supposed to meet up. The call dropped before I could answer. When I tried calling him back, it rang a few times and stopped. My subsequent calls went straight to voicemail. Evan ghosting me was nothing new. But when our appointed meetup passed and he still wasn't replying to me, I messaged his mom. She said he'd left ranting about the silver cord killer and the tunnels, but she thought it was just his usual talk. He was always spouting big ideas and conspiracy theories, never amounting to anything. She started to complain how she'd thrown her back out, and with him running off again, there was no one to help but Molly, his little sister. The trash and laundry were too heavy for her to lift by herself. I told her I'd come by later. But now I was truly worried for Evan. Called, messaged, even reported my concerns to the police, but they jumped right to assuming he'd skipped town to avoid a court hearing, which was, I admit, a pretty plausible assumption. No trace of him anywhere. Still no signal from his phone. He'd gotten out of jail. Mentioned new evidence. Arranged to meet me. And vanished. I decided to check the tunnels. The entrance we'd used as kids was smaller and more overgrown than I remembered. Flicked on my flashlight. The faint odor of sewage wafted to my nostrils as I made my way forward, the only sound the echo of my boots treading on the concrete. After a while of running my hand along the cool brick, I paused and turned to glance behind me. The entrance had become a distant square of white light. Was this really a good idea? Well, obviously not. I might go stumbling into whatever had caused Evan to disappear. Besides which, I couldn't remember the directions to Crow's Nest Cave. And even if I did find my way in, what was I supposed to be looking for? Then I remembered Evan's hint in our last conversation. You know, they actually found new evidence in the case. This had me tugging out my phone, searching the news, and I was stunned at the headline that came up. 25 years after brutal killings, Silver Cord Killer confesses. Whoa, Evan had seriously downplayed this. It wasn't just new evidence, the killer was actually in custody. And had confessed. So where the fuck was Evan, then? Maybe the police were right about him skipping town, leaving his mother alone to look after his sister, me scrambling to find him, and no one to pick up the pieces from his shattered life. I sighed and headed over to help his mom take out the trash. Evan's car was in the back when I pulled up, and my spirits lifted. I was eager to chew him out for all the usual trouble. But when I got inside, his mom told me he wasn't back yet. His car battery had died in the driveway, she said. She didn't seem nearly as worried as I felt. She was at her usual station in front of the TV, Molly crouched at her feet drawing a picture of a tree. Molly showed me the picture proudly. I gave her a tired smile. She'd grown since I'd last seen her, but she still had that too cute baby face, big-eyed and freckled. I figured she was lonely. With a nod to his mom, I went and grabbed the trash, threw it into the dumpster, and returned inside. You know, I bet he's probably just down at Crow's Nest, partying with those other junkies, she said. Think you might be able to go check? I hesitated. A bad feeling shivered down my spine. Well, she said, standing up and stretching. Guess I'm heading to bed. Molly, you come on now too, we've had a long day. I watched them shuffle off to the back room. Only then did I think to ask, where's your dog? The thing had barked its head off every time I'd visited previously. I'd never seen the little fluff ball before he came running around the corner, but I always heard him. Tonight, he wasn't barking. Oh, Evan gave Poppy away, she said, over her shoulder. Before he ran off again. Guess he thought we couldn't afford to feed her. That didn't sit right with me, but I let it go. Later, the case finally made the news. Authorities announced that not all the bodies of the victims had been found. Investigators discovered the dismembered remains of 4 women in Millstone tunnels, horribly mutilated, some of them even burned or gnawed by rats. The suspect, in his confession, mentioned he had one more victim, but her remains have never been found. The identity of this victim was unknown, as she did not match any of the previous known cases. Investigators suggested she may have been an accidental death. I froze when I read this. Was this Evan's sister? Was this the evidence he wanted to talk about? My first thought was that maybe he'd been killed because he got too close to the truth. I tried to reach out to him again but got no response. I finally stopped bothering after I got a message back that just said, "Stop." I figured this was either some sort of prank or Evan trying to get rid of me. I never heard from him again. In the end, I gave up. But I'll never forget that ominous, suffocating feeling I got when I realized what could have happened to him. Maybe he had simply fallen victim to the thing he'd been obsessed with his whole life. And sometimes, I can't help but wonder if that missing victim was someone else entirely.